Hello?
Hi, it's Denai.
Welcome to The Goal is to Eat, the talk show where visionaries in the world of taste share what it means to feel full. Today, ever-cool musician and chef Denai Moore, creator of Flaky, a Jamaican patty project, author of the cookbook Plentiful and 3 studio albums, sits on the Togo. So you often use the term genre-free to describe you and your work. What is it that you think is the common denominator between all of your creative endeavours, from cooking to making music to writing?
I guess for me, I always say genre free because I got quite frustrated with everyone constantly trying to define what I did.
Yeah.
Genre is like a big kind of thing, especially as like, I guess, a black woman in music.
Yeah.
It's always like people want to know where to place me. And for me, I never think about genre when creating anything. I guess everything I do comes from my desire to like express whatever it is in my brain, whether that's sonically like sounds,
Yeah.
the things that I hear on into like actual things.
Yeah, okay.
And so it felt quite frustrating to be limited by maybe genre.
Yeah.
And so I guess in my head, there's something quite freeing about just saying I'm actually just genre free.
Yeah, I
because
do it all.
it kind of just
Yeah.
throws it back in a sense that I don't know, I'm just making things that feel like me. And I think everything I do, I hope so, comes across
Yeah.
as I think people see me in like everything that I do. And I think even Plentiful, obviously I'd never written a book before. So it's kind of just like, if I wrote a book, what would that look like? As opposed to leaning so heavily on what was maybe already done. I think like sometimes it's like, you want to make something anyways, often that feels like, is this how you're meant to do it? But I don't think there's a way to do things. I think how you see things like uniquely is what makes whatever you're going to do like really special.
Yeah.
So I think even that in itself, like I'm constantly just trying to be more myself, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. So what is it that makes you yourself, or how do you tune into what is truly yours?
It's like a question. It starts with like, what do I want to say? What do I want to cook? What am I craving? I think craving is like a big one, especially for food. How do I see the world? Like
Yeah.
how I want to communicate with people, or just like through the mediums that I kind of, express myself in. I think that's more important than what is expected of me and what people think I should sound like.
Yeah.
I think because people have expectations of
No,
like,
totally.
they think they know what I will sound like, but actually I don't even know what I'll sound like, because it's like all the versions of yourself like will have new sounds and new things appear. And I think it's much more interesting to like be dedicated to like figuring what your internal like world sounds like, as opposed to what everyone thinks you should sound or be like, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And also that dedication, is that something you practice regularly, trying to work out who you are and what those layers are that come out in your sound or your food?
Yeah, I guess it's just being very unafraid. I think a lot of my favorite artists are like very unafraid of like being themselves.
Okay.
And that's the core of like everything that they do. And I think that is ultimately the most important thing to me, is like, how can I, from like Flaky, like I guess food wise, it's like food is the common denominator to like everything that we do. Like it's like the core of like most memories, or like smell, like there's so much of it that plays in our lives. And so I guess much of that is storytelling.
Yeah.
But also it's like, how do I want to do it in my own kind of unique way? I think that is way more important. I think a lot of people are afraid of like stepping into that territory, because it's like, I don't know, it's like kind of, you feel kind of naked when you
Yeah.
share things that are like
Yeah.
you birthed, or like
No,
you
totally.
created, that is so personal and you. But I think that is like magical, and like I wouldn't want to do it like any other way.
Yeah. And that is the work of an artist, is to put things out there and hope that the response is what you want it to be, or have no expectations of your own work, possibly.
Yeah, I guess the huge thing is the putting out of the thing, and all the making of it, I think, and just expressing it, because sometimes it's kind of scary. It's
Yeah.
like, when you
Yeah.
make things like different chapters of your life that is genuinely mirrors what you're feeling, you're like, oh, I guess
Yeah.
we're gonna go there.
Yeah.
Especially with music, that's what it feels like. But that to me, that nervous, like that tension between you and this thing, and like you're like, oh, that's like really revealing, or that's like,
Yeah.
But then actually, I think that is a really good thing to feel. I think a lot of people shy away from that. They're like, oh, but that feels like there's this nervous tension. Maybe I shouldn't do it. But then I always say, maybe I should do it.
Nice, yeah, fearlessness in a way,
Yes.
of putting yourself out there, trying it, because why not?
Yeah, I think nervousness is like a wonderful emotion. It means that you're like at the edge of like maybe what you've always wanted to do, or like maybe something that you actually want to express. And I feel like you should bring yourself to that place a bit more. Because if I wasn't nervous, I'd be a bit terrified.
Yeah, no,
It's
for
more
sure.
terrifying.
I remember once watching a video that said embarrassment is one of the most important emotions that we can feel as humans. And I wonder, with putting all of this work and life experience into 3 albums and a book, how much of yourself you're putting into those things and how it feels to then have these things out there in a package that people can then interact with in their own way.
It's so interesting, the concept of embarrassment, because it's more about how people are looking at you as opposed to like an internal observation.
Yeah.
It's more about the fear of what other people are thinking, where actually I think people think very little of you. And I think sometimes when you get out of your head and you allow yourself to like actually realize that, then like it's I guess it's how you see yourself, right? Like that truly matters. And it's like, how do you see like, how do you look at yourself? How do you interact with yourself and the things that, you know, pop up into your brain? I just think our childlike selves are artists or artistic in a way that is outside of like the gaze of what other people think. And it's a bit like kind of kids draw just freely, you know, expressing whatever. And it's always people like adults, whatever, be like, oh, did you draw the moon or the sun? And they're like, I don't know, I drew something.
Yeah, you're always projecting something
like,
on, or you're trying to extrapolate it into something else.
Yeah, so I don't think embarrassment is like an internal like observation of like, it's more what you think other people will think of what you make.
Yeah.
And I think very little about like what most people think.
That's good. That is
what
very
I
good.
make. I
You're
think
so wise.
I'm constantly tapping back into my childlike self and whatever I want to express. And so that is not in the gaze of like perfection. Like I think perfection is like also the biggest, like, or feeling ready fully, or like feeling like you have to be of a certain like qualification or level to then do this. And I think if people, especially if in music, if you think about it, it's like, if you felt like you needed to be the greatest guitarist in the world to write the best song, like that, it just misses the mark of what makes a good song, because it's more about the expression and the storytelling and how you play an instrument or how you interact with it. And so, you know, going back to me talking about like having a guitar when I was younger, there's a naivety in a way of like, I mean, I just didn't really know that I was going to write a song that day.
Yeah.
But I had 2 chords in me and I wrote this song called Changes, which felt like it came to me, and I could never write that again, because I can never experience that moment again. And I think, I guess being an artist is also just, I guess, tapping into like all these projects that I'm like encapsulating, like reflects that version of myself in that time. And it's about just, without allowing the gaze of other people, just, you know, making that thing for you first, beyond how you think people will perceive it. Because at the end of the day, it's like your expression of this, like whatever you're going through, what you're experiencing. And it's about being brave enough to be as honest and raw as possible. Because as soon as you get into expectations, what you think people expect, or like all this kind of stuff, you're cooked.
Yeah.
You know, because it's less about that. It's less about perfection. It's less about like, it's more about just...
And you're trying to satiate other people's appetites as well, and what they want, not what you want and what you need.
I think that's gorgeous. I think it's wonderful. I mean, it's why you do things. It's also why you go to things. You go to a bar because you're interested in the taste of who owns it, and you're interested of how they make an old fashioned, because it's the particular taste of the person, of like what they think makes the perfect, and how the glass, that kind of stuff. So it's like, be brave enough to just actually, you know, listen to your version of the things, you know. And I think that to me is more interesting than like trying to be like perceived in any other way by other people, critically, blah blah blah. Like people always, there'll be noise in some ways, but I think it's just like, it's more like the internal part that I like like the most. It's like me versus me kind of practice, you know?
Yeah. So when you speak about tuning in to yourself, I know that you live between Margate, London, then you'll spend long stretches with family in Jamaica. Where do you find that you can best tune in to yourself? What are those kind of, are there any techniques or things that you have to do to be able to tune in? And how do you make sure your inner child and your kind of inner desires and cravings are being taken care of?
I think genuinely being less stimulated is really good, because if you're constantly having like the noise of like things filling your brain, like how do you know how you feel when there's nothing there? So I think that's always a really kind of good thing. I think writing is really good, like waking up, writing down thoughts and like what is in your brain. Yeah, as like,
nice.
yeah, not every day.
Yeah.
Some days I miss it and stuff like that. But sometimes I think it's important to be still and to not like be stimulated. Like on my weekends, I also love to absorb as well. I think that's like a really important part of my practice, is actually to not practice. And not to write, not to do things, and allow myself to actually be inspired by other people's work. You know, going to art galleries, just like internally maybe having a quieter day of like not like producing, expressing, and more just like taking in like conversation, or just like going to the cinema, or like going to an art gallery, or like reading a book. Like all these things I think help to fuel and refuel like my desire to also like, you know, make, because like I am a fan of like food and like, you know, music, all these practices. So I think it's actually also important for me to like allow myself to be inspired by new things, you know?
Yeah, totally. So thinking about kind of finding that inspiration, where is it that you find fulfillment? What is it that makes you feel fullest?
I think I love myself when I'm tapped into a very playful energy. I love nature. So I think I feel very inspired, and like when I'm surrounded by nature.
Favorite landscape?
I think fulfillment is
So I was going to ask you your favorite landscape. Don't worry.
I mean, Margate sunset. Oh, gorgeous. I love it. I'm really looking forward to a summer filled with Margate sunsets. Nice. I also think like feeling full, like it's like your life purpose, if you may, like whatever that is, of like, what are you trying to like, where's the end point? I just don't think there is one. I think you're just like constantly kind of moving on to like the next thing. I guess, you know what, I'm really inspired by women and arts, and I'm fueled like by a lot of women in my life, and I think I'm looking forward to getting older and like the things I'll make as I get older. And even like I look at people like Tracy Emin, and how like she has this huge show in Tate Modern in her 60s, and she's been in her craft for decades. And I think what I'm trying to get at is like I feel like, I don't know, like there's my future I'm excited to be my future selves, you know? And so I don't really, this
Great
concept,
place to be.
what I'm getting stuck on is like, I don't know if I'm like, will ever, like there's always going to be something that I'll always have an appetite, if that makes sense. Like there's always going to be something new, and that's what actually really excites me about like life.
Living.
Life and being a living, breathing thing. It's like there's always going to be like another thing, you know.
No, totally.
So yeah.
I like what you said as well about Tracy being Tracy, if she allows us.
Oh, sorry.
No, about being in her crafts. You know, I think that's so cool. I just suddenly pictured like you surrounded by these like bubbles of things that you like, you know, and you're just in it, in this world of creation.
Yeah, I guess, you know what it is? It's being curious. I think remaining curious, like curiosity is like extremely important to me. And maybe that's what I'm trying to say, is like that I will always have an appetite and a thirst for whatever it is that keeps me curious, either in my craft or just like in myself. You have to have a curiosity about yourself to keep doing the things that like, you know, that fuel you. And I think that's what fuels me, and essentially is like curiosity. I'm like a very curious kind of person. And I think all the best people keep keep going, they keep making, they keep like pushing themselves, they keep like,
energized,
but also like, being a beginner at something new, and like, there's like so many layers to life. I think, as soon as you stop that curious part of your brain, I think like, you stop asking the questions to yourself. I think that what feels like you feel a bit stagnant, and then you're like repeating things like in the same way. And I think that can feel, to me, like that's when you feel a bit stuck. Whereas I think it's important to remain curious. Also trusting.
Hi.
B-roll.